Welcome back to the Health Longevity Secrets Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Robert Lufkin. Our understanding of aging and longevity has undergone a revolution in the last decade with dramatic strides in such things as epigenetic reprogramming, stem cells, mTOR, AMPk, and sirtuins. Today, we speak with Laura Minquini, host of the Future of Longevity series. She is also the founder of MIKIGAI, a direct-to-consumer longevity platform dedicated to the education, vetted curation, and management tools for people to get on board with longevity as a lifestyle. Having spent most of her career in trend forecasting and branding design and fashion products, she sees the potential of longevity of becoming the next big consumer category, empowering people to take their health into their own hands. And now, please enjoy this interview with Laura Minquini. Hey, Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I can't wait to get in and talk about this. So many interesting things to talk about with longevity. But before we dive into that, maybe you could just take a moment and tell us a little bit about what inspired you to get involved in this space.
Yeah, so my name is Laura Minquini, and I'm the CEO and founder of MIKIGAI, a discovery and recommendation platform for longevity. I also like to call myself a longevity advocate. I didn't have a traditional route in arriving in longevity because I'm not a medical scientist or an MD, and I'm not interested so much in living forever. How I arrived here is I started my career in fashion, a fashion editorial. I moved to marketing, and then I had an amazing opportunity to start a company. About a decade ago, we were doing consumer tech products in Europe. We were the first one to brand them as fashion accessories. And we were working with Apple, all the most amazing fashion stores around the world. And I did that for about 8 years. It was a very exciting time traveling around the world, distribution, all of these things. However, I realized with some time that there were piles of plastic around the world that were going to live longer than I did and a lot of other people. I did not want to continue that, and I didn't want that to be my legacy. So we sold that company, and I looked for a long time to do something meaningful with the next stage of my life. I looked for many different metrics, things that did not make people consume stupid things, something that would have a positive impact to society. And it was difficult to find, actually. It took me 2 years. I was consulting, and I got a dog, and somebody asked me to volunteer my puppy to retirement homes and hospitals because he's a miniature dachshund. He's great for pet therapy because you can put them on people's laps, and he's tiny. So I started doing that, and I discovered, as I like to say, the world of aging. And I said I discovered the world of aging because we think we know aging is going to happen, but I don't think we do. People don't want to think about it. They only think about it, I guess, start to be confronted with it in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. You're really in the middle of it, and you realize, oh, shoot, I'm getting older. But what I discover at these retirement homes and hospitals is that people don't want to go into these places, usually. They end up there because of disease or because something happened in terms of like that first fall, or neurodegenerative diseases did happen. And to me, I said, okay, this is my mission. How do we change the way we age? Because this is not what I found people liked in terms of they took away their pets, they miss their communities. I realized that ideally people want to age what they call in the aging space, in aging in place. So I did a market research. I looked into different areas of aging, from how do you keep making income to companionship, aging in place. And when I was doing that, I started interviewing some people in longevity, some scientists, some stem cell therapists, other founders. And then I discovered the longevity space, and I thought, okay, this is really getting to root causes, not just treating symptoms, but it's with longevity, preventive health, and regenerative health that we have the best opportunity to age differently. So that's how I got into longevity and why I decided that this is a field that I wanted to be in. I discovered, as somebody that had worked in branding and storytelling, that this story we tell with longevity is not necessarily the most consumer friendly, and that there was a lot of work that I would want to come and help in the sense of what I mentioned earlier to you in our discussion. It doesn't inspire people when you tell them immortality. It doesn't inspire that many people when you tell them living to 150. If you're a biohacker and an optimizer and you already take care of your health and you have a certain level of education, of course you're inspired by this, because either you have the resources or your mentality is already there. I'm already healthy. How do I even achieve more? But most of society, it's not that way. People have families, they have jobs. Some people have jobs that they don't love. So how do you tell these people, hey, imagine living to 150? And they're like, I don't even know if I want to live to 80. So the other aspect of it is that what we see of aging is usually very negative. We see people with disease, we see people in convalescence. So it doesn't inspire people to want to live longer. And longevity, to me, it's a completely different shifting of mindset. It's not thinking of treating disease, but preventing disease. And that to me is the biggest potential.
Yeah, you bring an unusual expertise to this space in branding, and I've heard the quote, "Let's talk longevity instead of aging."
Yes, I love saying that
from your website, I think as well. So it'll be fascinating to see how you apply these things. How do you view longevity, or how is your concept of longevity changed after speaking with these experts and immersing yourself in kind of the technology and the breakthroughs of the longevity space?
So first part was, when I got into the longevity space, I was very opposed to the notion of calling aging a disease. Because to me, it makes, for a lot of people, it would make them think that, oh, they're sick as they're aging. And in a way, aging is living. If you're not aging, it means you stop living. And if you stop living, then, well, you're not there. So that's even worse. But one of the biggest things that I learned is the fact that it's more of a semantics thing that has to do with how the FDA runs trials. And it's important that people understand this, that scientists calling aging a disease is not because they want people to feel like they're sick. And I know some longevity scientists would say that, yes, it is a disease because we are getting sick. But I would put the reframing and saying that calling aging a disease is an important barrier to overcome how we look at all these trials for new therapies and to do research into diseases of aging. So that was the biggest takeaway. The other thing is the aspect that people don't realize about cancer, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. They're mostly diseases of aging. And it's true that children can get cancer. It can be genetic, but it mostly happens at a certain point in life, and that has to do with the aging process. So when we talk about fighting aging and diseases of aging, we're really talking about fighting all these things that people don't want as they get older. So we have to reframe things a bit, but when you get to meet the scientists and what they're doing, you realize that they're doing such important work, and it's not being framed that way because of some of the language we use.
Yeah. Your point on the FDA in particular of classifying language as a disease is really a key point as well, because it not only affects the FDA and the ability to get funding for trials, but even downstream from that, it affects drug development and investment for what can be paid for. because right now you can't have an anti-aging drug because there's no disease category for aging. So investment in the area is limited by that as well. So it seems like a small point, but it could have major implications as far as funding research in the area. But all these points are
completely underfunded. People don't realize it, but what goes into research that targets aging, it's a minutia compared to things that go into cancer and other diseases. And I'm not saying we should stop looking at cancer, because one of the biggest pushbacks that you get from the general public with aging and the language that we use in fighting or like targeting aging is, well, we haven't figured out cancer. Why do we even think we can extend life? But it's all correlated. It is just a different way to look at the research. And we could potentially, I mean, being in this space and interviewing a lot of experts, last year saw a really big growth in investment into the longevity field and companies that are looking into particularly into it. And again, there was pushback because a lot of the headlines misinterpret or want to use what I call clickbait, rage sales nowadays. So there's resentment towards billionaires. So throw in billionaires want to live forever, and then you get a click, because people just naturally will get mad at that. Instead of saying, yes, they are a number of wealthy people that are investing into this, but it's the history of humanity that it has always been wealthy people who invest into these novel technologies. And they will get to everybody else, like the vaccination happened. I mean, I've said it that at the turn of the century, thanks to vaccination, clean water, we were able to extend lifespan. And it was first wealthy people that had them, just because that's how things sometimes happen. But it doesn't mean that it won't get to the rest of the public. And the research into cell therapies and looking at all these things doesn't just affect the people that invest in it. It will get to everybody else. So to demonize it and make it seem like it's about living forever rather than treating disease, to me, it's terrible, obviously, because I'm for longevity. The other aspect is there's a huge population shift that it's happening in the next 30 years. We know that there's going to be more people over 65 than people under 15 by 2050. If people are not aging with rejuvenation therapies in place or preventing disease, there's not going to be enough people to take care of all those potentially diseased people at a later stage in life. And that could get very scary as far as I see it, because having spent time in retirement homes and knowing a lot of what happens as we age, long-term care facilities, they really suffered during the pandemic. And we're talking about a situation that could be many times over if people are not actually aging healthier.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And also I wanted to underscore your other point about all these different diseases: cancer, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease. Those are very important, but they do, as you say, share common underlying metabolic mechanisms. And that's evidence for that is that the single greatest risk factor for all those diseases is age. In other words, the aging itself is the risk factor for those. So anything we can do to better understand aging will be multiplied, presumably, hopefully, across all the other diseases that come on with aging. I'm excited to talk about the program that you put on about the summits that you did over the last few months. You've had great speakers and just fascinating topics. They were all called The Future of Longevity, and there were 4 of them. I think the first one was back in June, but you had like Aubrey de Grey, David Sinclair, some great Liz Parrish, who's been on this podcast, and several others. Any takeaways from that experience for you, or from that first session that you want to share?
So to give you context, we were last year still pretty much in the middle of the pandemic. And this famous app came up, Clubhouse, which was revolutionary in the sense that everybody was there because everybody was at home. And I started with somebody else first. On my end, I did Let's Talk Longevity, which was about featuring founders in the longevity space that already had direct-to-consumer products. So we had people like OneSkin, which is a peptide, and then diagnostics like Like and Age. They already are in the market, and that's my interest, people that are already in the market. And because the longevity community is small, my friends in the field, Dr. Abby Roy, who's in Oxford, and then Nathan Chang, who has done, many initiatives, and now he's the program director for longevity biotech and On Deck. They do have now that thing. He's the one that started it. We decided to do this sort of panel discussion where we would bring together some of the most important researchers in the field and discuss where we are with longevity. We've had different subjects, and it was very exciting because, as you said, we had some of the most well-known researchers and a spokesperson in the field. And I remember one big takeaway is Jim Mellon, a big investor in the field, saying that we simply don't put enough money into looking at these technologies that could help us to reverse aging or rejuvenation. So him as an investor, as somebody who's has had different businesses and is an enthusiast and an investor in the field, he says there's simply not enough money. People think that longevity is big, it's not. First takeaway. The second one was, even between scientists, they have different ways of looking at hallmarks of aging, at the therapies, at how they view versus longevity is about extension or health span. So our mission is, everybody that's into this field does want to help the different areas, but there's not yet a unified, let's just say, the same way as cancer, the way in which we're presenting the field. And that, I think, is an important aspect to come to a consensus as a community, simply because it doesn't help if everybody's talking in different ways where, oh, you're a lifespanner, you're a health spanner, it's just, we all want the same thing in some version or another. And I have friends, what you call maximalist, like for instance, my Nathan, who does, I do these Let's Talk Longevity with, you would consider him a maximalist, as where you consider somebody like me a health spanner. And I believe that we all meet in the middle somewhere, but it's so important that we have a unified, cohesive voice to reach, to become bigger, to not just be a fringe movement or not just get this, this little funding, but to really inspire people to say, oh, this is something we all need to fight for, not just people that have their life that, just want to live forever or have the means to do it. Because you ask people, do you want to live forever? They say no. And you say to them, do you want to live well, healthy until the day you die? And they'll say yes. So longevity to me is that, the opportunity to age empowered, to be able to age independently, to be able to, if you want to stay at home, you stay at home. And that's that we're not aging that way right now. In North America, it's 10 plus years with disease towards end of life. And that's a lot of time with poor quality of life. We need to contextualize life in different ways, because people that are in their 50s, 60s, they think they're already quote unquote old. When you say you have another 30 years of life, that's not chump change. It's quite a lot. There's still so much to do. And when you think that we could extend it another 30, 40 years, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's such an important concept too. The idea that we hear repeated so often in this space, but it's worth saying it again, that as you say, that the extending lifespan without improving health span, in other words, the extending lifespan, if you're going to be sick for 20 years instead of 10 years, nobody wants that. But if we can extend health span where we're healthy longer, then most people won't argue with that. But it's an important concept, and we need to be clear on that message with people as well. In the second Future of Longevity program, I think that was one you're referencing with Jim Mellon was there, and then also George Church and Nir Barzilai, and I guess Nir Barzilai and David Sinclair. Okay, yeah, and Dr. Nir Barzilai is going to be on our program to talk about his TAME trial.
I love Dr. Barzilai. He's so optimistic. It's infectious.
Very enthusiastic, and his TAME trial, specifically using metformin, I think has been fully funded and is even starting now, and that will lay the groundwork, hopefully, with the FDA of classifying aging as potentially a disease, and hopefully a treatable disease with that as well. What else? Any other takeaways from that second conference on longevity with George Church? I think Kristen Fortney was there from BioH Labs, and Alejandro Ocampo also, I think.
Yeah, it was like a really big one. It was, it was so exciting just to be able to get all those amazing scientists, researchers, and founders to get them all in one call. And there was, I think the biggest thing is that they were also, I had the impression that they were also very enthusiastic about doing this. And I think one of the things that happened in the last year is the fact that there are more people who are interested in elevating these voices. And it's super important that people don't think that they need to be scientists themselves to get involved in the field, because as you know, I'm not a scientist myself. I'm just curious and I pay attention. And yes, it takes some time figuring out who's saying what their area of expertise is, and trying to discern the different, trying to look through the different research without really knowing how to read these papers, but figuring out ways in which you can educate yourself. I think for me, the exciting part is trying to always bring these people that are doing so much important work to the forefront, and not so much doing the science communication, because I'm not a scientist myself. I mean, Dr. Sinclair right now has his own podcast. And I'm personally a big fan of Huberman, Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist from Stanford and has his very successful podcast. I mean, I think it's like he has something like, I don't know how many million people follow him. And I go to his IG lives and he has something like 2,000 people or 3,000 people on a Sunday at 6 p.m. that log in to listen to him. This is super important work, that people get interested in science, that they get interested in these influencers in science, or people like you that are exposing these experts to everybody. It shouldn't be about just scientists speaking to scientists. So when we did the Future of Longevity, as my being the least technical person there, I always wanted to ask the most, not the most basic questions. What I wanted to say is ask the questions of how do we speak to the general public about this? Or what are the messages that are important, you think, that people understand? And that's why I contextualized it to Jim Mellon, saying people think, the general public think that there's a lot of money going into the field. There isn't. And I mean, you know this, that there isn't. And we're not doing enough in prevention. Our health education is not there. We're not talking enough about the dangers of sugars. We're not talking about how obesity is, they talk about the epidemic, but then we don't really delve into how do we change it. And I just wish that scientists became as big as some celebrities out there who like just, put a diet tea and everybody goes to buy it. One day, hopefully people will understand enough that they themselves also would want to practice better health. Because we talk about saving money, right, for our future. But in the end, we need to also start thinking of, we need to save health, and that's by prevention. Because you kind of cash out everything towards end of life, your money and your health. And whatever you did through all those years is going to compound. And I want to caveat that by saying that obviously there is some genetic predisposition or diseases that you cannot control, but there's an outlier for everything, right? In reality, what is it? They calculated 75 to 90% of lifestyle is obviously influence your epigenetics, which is how you are going to do eventually with your health as you get older. So there's a lot that we can do ourselves that has nothing to do with genes in our health and our aging process.
Yeah, that's such a good point about people becoming interested in science, as well as being able to critically look at science to decide for themselves.
Yeah.
And what are evidence-based things, and having speakers like Dr. Huberman or Dr. Sinclair and others reach out to the public and connect with them is great, because it's empowering people to believe in science and to think critically about their world.
Well, I love that you say think critically, because there's something very important, is that science is evolving. And I really dislike it when I like go to when you're having conversations or like trying to hosting other podcasts or rooms with people that are also interested in the field and say, oh, this latest study came out and intermittent fasting is conclusive to reverse aging. And you're like, no. We can't say those things, because in reality, one of the things that frustrates people with science, and that's why I think the pandemic was crucial in getting people interested and also a bit confused or hesitant towards it, is because wear masks. No, but don't wear masks. And yes, intermittent fasting helps in aging. And no, it doesn't. And when you realize that a lot of these studies are in mice, there's a limit to what's out there, and nothing should be considered as like, oh, if you do this, it's all evolving. And you have to always caveat with people to tell them, hey, I agree we eat too much. I do intermittent fasting because there's so much sugar out there and we eat too much that there must be something good that happens to my health. But I wouldn't go as far as saying that you're going to gain 10 years of your life from intermittent fasting, because first of all, we're all very bio-individual. And that's the exciting thing about longevity. It's the diagnostics and the personalization that's going to come from all these technologies. Not one diet works for one person. It's not, we cannot do blanket things for everybody. And we've learned that. We've done the best that we can with what technology and science has given us. But we're going to do even better, because eating meat, eating an all meat diet and not having plants might work for some, but not for others. Eating all plants and not protein, it's also not beneficial for everybody. We're all individuals, not only in personality, but also biologically. And that's the exciting part about a lot of these amazing companies that are coming into the market, that they're helping you figure out your own biology and what's good for you personally, so you can be healthier.
Yeah, very, very good points. And the thing I like about science, unlike say politics or religion, is you don't have to believe it for it to be true. And if something is true in science, then scientists accept it everywhere. It is a fact. But as you say, it's constantly evolving too. And what we accept today will undoubtedly, our models of science will be revised in the future.
We'll just find out more, right? It's just going to get better. That's the only thing. And science only gets better.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how it.
And then, well, your last two longevity conferences, I see you had Morgan Levine from Yale, and then Gordon
Dr.
Louts
Lane.
and Matt Caverline from is working with in the longevity space that I'm working on as well, and Gordon Louts has been on this program with glycans and all. So what's the best biological clock for measuring longevity? That's the
Let's not get into that conversation.
Yeah, there's
personally, I mean, I love what Glycan Age is doing with Dr. Gordon Lauk and with his with Nicolina Lauk, who's the co-founder. I love it because they're looking at inflammation, right? They're looking at things that matter and your immune system. And that's I don't know if it's the clock of aging, but to actually have a window into that, it's crucial when you think that a lot of what happens when we get older, it's related to inflammation, and this state of inflammation of our body is the one thing that affects a lot of digestion. I mean, so many things are because of that. So if you can have a window into that and work in changing it, it's a very helpful tool. But you know that the biological clocks are very, very controversial. Some people think they're like toys, that they don't really tell you anything. And that also has to do with the context that there is no one definition of aging that everybody can agree on in terms of, oh, this is the one clock or this is the one definition. The body is very complicated, right? So everybody is looking at different ways to measure this. I personally, as a direct-to-consumer person, think that people taking interest in these and using them as tools to optimize their health is ultimately helpful. But that's because I'm thinking, how do we get people more interested in their health, in their preventive health? And having access to these diagnostics, being able to measure things. I mean, we met through the guys from Bristol Health, right? And to me, that's such a powerful tool to be able to test your oral microbiome. That's the exciting thing for me. It's imagine, I mean, you get all these tests at home and you're testing the state of your oral health, the taste of this, the state of your gut health, your inflammation, and then you're like, oh, I mean, I'm super healthy, or oh shoot, I really need to start ramping up that that flossing or these different things. Prevention is key, and we need to get into that. I mean, to me, that's one of the reasons I started MIKIGAI, because when I looked into how to make the most impact, to me, it would be prevention. Is trying to get people interested in staying healthy, not because they're sick, but because they're healthy and they just want to stay that way. And in particular for women, because, and I think we had this conversation, women during perimenopause and menopause, or rate of aging accelerates. And we don't talk enough about this. So trying to come up with things that help us go through menopause or delay it or take away some of the symptoms, to me, is some of the most exciting research that could be going on right now in terms of longevity. And the longevity of female fertility is highly understudied. Go figure, is women's health. I don't want to get into that, but when research studies have been run, it's mostly focused on with male subjects. So even looking into women's health up close and more personal, it's something that needs to happen now more than ever, because there's going to be a lot of women going through menopause and perimenopause in the next 10, 15 years. So it's a hugely understudied and underfunded and underappreciated area of women's health.
Absolutely. Yeah. Women's health across the board in medicine, and certainly longevity as well, deserves a lot more attention than it's getting. And hopefully that's changing. Well, let's talk about MIKIGAI. Tell us what it means. How did you get that interesting name? What's the story behind that, and how does that go?
So the story behind that is I didn't know what I wanted to do yet, but I did figure out that I wanted that name right away. Go figure branding. But when I did my market study, I was looking at aging quote unquote successfully. Of course, when you look at anything that has to do with aging, you will discover the blue zones and the, you know, from Dan Buettner that looked at the areas in the world where people live the longest. And it's not the longest, it's just, but they live independently and with relative health. So Sardinia, there's I forget the one in California. There's one there, Costa Rica. Yeah. And the one Okinawa. The one that struck me on the name was so Okinawa. One thing that they realized these centenarians had was ikigai. And Ikigai has become a very popular concept lately because we're talking about purpose, right? And it's come a lot in professional, with people that are looking at their careers and the whole idea of getting paid for what you love. But Ikigai goes even more basic than that because the whole idea of Ikigai was encompassing sense of purpose. But purpose could be waking up in the morning to see your grandchild. Purpose could be waking up to like cut your bonsai tree. So it's not about a purpose of a career or like, you know, having this idea of, oh, I'm going to be a CEO, but simply it's like a reason for living, for wanting to be there. And Ikigai was one of these things for these centenarians. So instead of just using Ikigai, I put my Ikigai and it became MIKIGAI. And it's funny because when we do transcripts, MIKIGAI, usually phonetic is my key guy, which I find really funny, like my key guy. But the whole purpose of, so I found his name and I said, this is what I want to go with because I want to make what I do about aging healthy, or how can we change the paradigm of aging? To me, the paradigm of aging shouldn't be changing. It shouldn't be about optimizing care providers or you know, how to invoice better, which is important because if you know, in the US, aging is very complicated, just even dealing with insurance. And this is a time where it should be as simple as possible, but apparently the type of insurance, the state that you live in really affects what you have access to and the programs that you have access to. And that to me is so terrible because people at that point don't really want to be dealing with forms. They just want, you know, they want to stay as comfortable as possible. But MIKIGAI, the whole point is how do we age successfully, or how do we stay empowered in the process of aging? And that's why I say to me, longevity is about prevention and the opportunity to age differently, or not age, hopefully one day. I'm not against that. It's just in the immediate, what can be my impact to people in the immediate, the people that are aging right now. And to me, that was providing education tools and exposure to these scientists. So trying to decipher some of this amazing technology, some of this new research, and educating the general public by interviewing the scientists, doing things like Let's Talk Longevity or the future of longevity. How do we take that science and bring it down to the consumer? And the other aspect is kind of becoming a central hub of having all these amazing companies that are doing great things in one place so people can find them. Because there's a ton of startups that are doing incredible things, but they are all over the place. So unless you're looking for them, you won't know that they're there. And if you want to actually get into a full program in which you're really looking at everything that involves in your aging process, there isn't really a place for that right now. And that's why I created MIKIGAI. It's I call it curation and education. And I say curation because I'm interested in companies that do really have science behind them, that either has a scientific team or researchers, or there's some solid research that has gone into it. Because as you know, there is a lot of what we think is holistic health, that it's really based on people being really great salesmen. And they say the right things, they put the right words and people think that that's health. And placebo effect is super powerful, but at some point that, using your oils to get over your acid you have won't be enough. You will need science eventually. That's why you go to a doctor eventually. But what if we can do a lot of these preventive health at home with amazing biotechnology companies that are doing great things and are making these things accessible to you, like Glycan Age, Bristle Health. I don't know if you know OneSkin, this amazing 4 PhD women that developed this incredible peptide for, I guess what you would call, what they call it skin span. So I love anything that marries science, technology, and products that go direct to consumers. So that's our mission, to introduce a lot of these companies to people, to make sure that they know they can come to us. And we would have already looked at everything to make sure people know that what they're getting is vetted and curated, and we're giving them the best possible companies that are out there. And I do want to say, Dr. David Sinclair last week, I think, had in his podcast spoke about OneSkin. And I know that the founders from OneSkin were very excited, and somebody sent it to me. And I said, well, just so you know, I featured OneSkin 6 months ago in our curation for longevity. So we are bringing some of the best companies out there. And I was a trend forecaster. So I do have a good eye in catching things even before they become big.
So that's great. So the experience, people anywhere, this is an online community, so people can join anywhere in the world. Basically, just go to the website, and then when they become part of the community, they get access to these new companies, this, as you say, curated technology and their evaluations. So what is their experience like? Or is there like a group Q&A, or
the education comes from the newsletter and our longevity toolkit. We do a weekly newsletter in which we talk about different subjects in the field, not just only related to your health, but how can we make longevity the biggest next consumer category? As I said, I really would love for people to start thinking about longevity instead of aging, and not because I think people should get into wanting to live forever, but how do you make that switch from going to the doctor, not even having to go to the doctor, but think, okay, aging is a process that happens from the moment you're conceived. It doesn't happen when you're 40 or 30 or 50. It's happening as you live. So changing from aging to longevity is thinking, okay, every day that I'm living, it's great, it's a gift. How do I preserve my health for that period? That's, to me, is longevity. It's taking every possible measure to stay healthy. So we have the newsletter that looks at the industry in general, also aging, how do we improve the communication, things that are happening. And then we have our longevity toolkits, where we dissect different areas like the microbiome. This month in particular, we're doing a whole section on microbiome. We look at, you get checklist of protocols. This is how you take care of this, gut health, everything that could help you stay healthy, sleep, all of that. So you access our libraries. And then our curation of brands, we do brand features on bi-weekly basis. Weekly just depends on when we're interviewing the founders, when we're putting together the kits that go with that feature. And the biggest part is we get access to our members to the biggest possible discount offer. I don't like the word discount because sometimes then people think it's like something that it's cheap, but the best possible price out there in the market. And we do this by 2 ways. It's on a limited time, the best price. So we go, imagine that it's like a Black Friday on a weekly basis on each one of these companies. And it's limited time offers simply because you can't tell these companies, oh yeah, my subscribers should be able to access this forever at this price, because they're startups and they're doing this, in a limited time and limited unit capacity, they wouldn't be able to grow their business if this was permanent. But this we do for one reason, is sometimes people, when it's new technologies, they're hesitant in trying new things. And they think, why should I try diagnostic for $250? It's not necessarily like buying a supplement for $30. So by being able to provide limited time opportunities to try these products at a really great price, we're actually making it more accessible. And that's my thought process, is let's make this accessible to people to at least try it for the first time, see how it goes, and then potentially then realize the value that these companies provide in terms of the data that they give you back on your health, the actionable insights. I always put the example of constant glucose monitors. If you use a constant glucose monitor for 2-3 months, it could be about, $500 over the period of those 3 months, even just a bit more, right? Because you usually get it with the company and an app, and it gives you recommendations. That's cheaper than if you get diabetes, because diabetes, just to treat it without any of the other diseases, is $10,000 a year. So compare that amount, 500 to 700 for like a year, then 10,000. When to me, I say it as a woman who knows other professional women, women are spending sometimes on luxury shoes about $1,000. If you check your glucose over a period of 3 months to know how you're doing, it's just so much more valuable than having a pair of shoes that are going to go out of style next year. So, trying to reframe things. But our community has also access to a private channel where I share a lot of articles, and we have an in-house geroscientist who's amazing. He's a researcher in longevity, and he's the one that prepares. Just for reference, people need to know I'm not the one who prepares the checklist, because then people say, she's not an MD, she's not a scientist. Why is she doing this checklist? It's not me. I'm always bringing experts into the field, and we do have a geroscientist who specializes in looking at aging and longevity, doing these toolkits with us, so that people know it's not me who's making those recommendations. I always go to experts. We're going to have you do something on metabolic health, Robert.
Sure, I'd love it. And for our audience of the video podcast, we're going to put a code in there, and it'll be Lufkin MD, but it'll be in the show notes, and if you put that code in, you get the first 2 months free to try MIKIGAI and see how much fun all these things are and how valuable this information is.
Yeah, looking forward to having your members. You had such amazing guests too that I also want to contextualize, and MIKIGAI is not only for people that are already into longevity or health. My mission is trying to convert people that are also are curious and maybe are not health optimizers. It has, experiencing health can be not just also about taking metrics and measuring everything. I'm personally, I don't know, do you measure a lot of things in your daily? Probably you do, Robert, but I myself, I don't do it. I'm not a quantifier, simply because I know my psychology, and I would become crazy if I'm measuring everything all the time. I'm personally one of those, like, pick and select at different periods, do something about it, and measure later. But if I had to read my apps every day to see if I'm okay, I would literally become crazy. And I just want to contextualize to people that you don't have to be an enthusiast to get into this, because I'm personally not one of those people that is measuring what they eat or looking at their sleep cycles all the time. And I admire the people that do, and I feel it's a personal preference. As long as you do something to keep your health and measure some of these outcomes in a way that it's good for you, half the battle is there.
Absolutely. There are many ways to be healthy and achieve longevity, and you don't have to be a biohacker necessarily, or a quantifier. And it sounds like that the MIKIGAI community accepts all comers. Basically, there's a space for them in there. That just in the last couple minutes, you mentioned your diet before, that you do intermittent fasting. Do you follow any other dietary or what's your fasting pattern? Just out of curiosity, if you wouldn't share it with us.
Yeah, so I stop eating if I have a very long day. I guess I'm trying to do this new thing where you don't eat when it gets dark, but it's very difficult when you live in Canada and it gets dark at 6 p.m. So I mean, when you Girish or Girish Harinath or neuroscientist, talks a lot about the circadian rhythms, and I know Dr. Huberman and a lot of doctors in longevity talk about this. It's very important. And I know that one of the big things is trying to not eat when it gets dark. Unfortunately, I live in the north of the world, and the hemisphere, and it gets dark here like sometimes at 4:30 p.m. So what I do is I stop at 6, 7, and I mean, what do you call it? 18:6, I guess. So for me, the easiest part is not eating breakfast, but that's personal. And that's because I got my body already used to it. I know that there are people that say it's very bad not to eat breakfast. It's just my personal preference. The other thing that I want to say about diet is I'm not particularly concerned about calories. Like, I do believe that nutritionists or influencers that talk about don't worry about calories, there's something right about it, because not all calories are made the same. And if people don't have the tools to really be measuring which good calories they're intaking, then you can become obsessed about something that is not even necessary to obsess about. I do believe we eat too much in the Western world. Food now is really pretty packaged. The fact that it comes out of whole foods doesn't mean it's really clean or healthy, because a lot of those foods actually have more sugars than anything else. But I'm personally, for instance, a carnivore. I need to eat animal protein. That's just, I tried to be a vegetarian when I got my dog, because I realized animals really do have very formed personalities and intelligence that I probably do think that other animals like cows, I know that pigs, for instance, are smarter than dogs. And now I try not to think of it. I mean, I don't need pork that much, but I do need to eat animal protein, eggs. I love salmon, I love fish, and I do need that animal as much as I wouldn't want to. And I know that there are longevity MDs that say don't eat animal protein. I know that that's what feels good for me. So, I try to eat a balanced diet. The one thing I like to say, sugar is a longevity killer. If there's anything people should do and get rid of, is sugars. I don't eat pop. I don't drink carbonated drinks in terms of, I used to love Coke Zero. I stopped that. I try not to have processed foods. And I really just want to reiterate to people that sugar is everywhere. It's addictive. We don't realize it, how much it's in our food. And again, those health foods that you see at I love going to Whole Foods. I mean, the packaging, all of these things look so cute, so cool. But people should really pay attention to the sugar content of food, because sugar is a huge problem. You know it as an MD. Alzheimer's research, cardiovascular disease, all of these things always tie back to glucose. And if there's anything that people should get rid of more than debate if it's vegetables or animals that they should eat, get rid of sugars. That's my thing. I do everything to avoid it.
Yeah, that's a consistent theme that we hear from every expert, no matter where they are on the dietary spectrum. It's pretty much increasingly everybody agrees how bad sugar is. And processed carbohydrates too, starches as well, unfortunately.
Oils, well, also the
seed oils, yeah.
But to me, I guess you try to pick one thing, right? And for me, it's the sugar. It's get rid. And I always say sugar, stress, and sleep. You need to work on those 3 S's. Sleep, because it regenerates your brain, it regenerates your body. Stress, because it causes all the inflammation that causes all the other problems. And sugar is just your healthy longevity secrets. Those would be like the 3 S's of the secrets that I take care of.
That's great. So, Laura, how can people find you on social media? We're going to put all your contacts in the show notes, but just for people who are listening to this as an audio only broadcast, maybe you could tell them your website and social media contacts.
Yeah, so they can find me on Twitter at Laura Minquini, and MIKIGAI as they can find us on Instagram, on TikTok, our website. If anybody looks up curation for longevity, they should also directly find our newsletter. And where else? I mean, we're even on YouTube as well, but sometimes you have so many channels. I'll have to say that I'm myself personally the most active on Twitter. I like the conversations that happen there. I've met incredible people there, colleagues, friends, and there's so much you can learn there. And Instagram, we also really like, because I know that a lot of women in particular trying to find out more about their health there. So, and MIKIGAI is the abbreviation of my ikigai, but you just take away the I at the, Mykigai, and it's just together with mine. And thank you so much for having me, Robert. I'd love to have the reverse, have you to come on an interview with us to talk about metabolic health and the work you do, because I said to you in our conversation, I know that I have a lot of friends that are very much talking about this year. And I feel like it's a trend for 2022 as well, where there's more startups and companies going into doing preventive health, looking through this area in particular.
Yeah, it's such an exciting time to be in the longevity space and the metabolic space. And it seems that, metabolic health drives longevity. So, things are all tied together again. So once again, Laura, thanks so much for spending this hour with us and letting us get to know you and the good work you're doing on MIKIGAI. I can't wait to sign up and see see what fun we can have.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Make sure that you're in a newsletter so you have access to our libraries. And then when we feature you, you also share it with our community. And thank you so much. And just a last word to remind everybody that anything that they do in prevention helps towards the later years in life. And the best thing that can happen to us when we get older is to have health. With health, you do everything.
So true.
This is for general information and educational purposes only, and it's not intended to constitute or substitute for medical advice or counseling, the practice of medicine, or the provision of healthcare, diagnosis, or treatment, or the creation of a physician-patient or clinical relationship. The use of this information is at their own user's risk. If you find this to be on the value, please hit that like button to subscribe to support the work that we do on this channel. And we take your suggestions and advice very seriously, so please let us know what you'd like to see on this channel. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time.